and we all pray that दोनों बच्चे हैं बिल्कुल स्वस्थ हो जाएं जल्दी.
Thank you.
Right, sir. और हम लोग लोकल किसी सोसाइटी के उसमें से भी लोग to join us. He would be joining probably. Dr. Amit, are you here? So he would be joining soon. Sir, एक चीज और है आज. एक बहुत इम्पोर्टेंट डे है, सिग्निफिकेंट डे है. हमारे एक डिपार्टमेंट का एक स्टार है सर, बहुत इम्पोर्टेंट पर्सन है, वेरी अट्रैक्टिव पर्सन. उसका so I will just share my screen. And let's celebrate Dr. Nachiket's birthday. Today is Dr. Nachiket's birthday.
Nachiket, happy birthday.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Thank you, Shivam, sir.
Happy birthday, sir.
I really appreciate it.
Today is my wedding anniversary also.
Sir, great, sir. Congratulations to you all.
Great. I'll always remember your birthday.
I'll always remember your anniversary now, sir.
Great.
Dear Nachiket.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, sir. Really appreciate it.
Great.
Thank you for the affection, sir. And it's very special getting love and affection from especially seniors in the department. And as everyone knows, Shivam sir is just like my elder brother. And I really appreciate it, sir, that you remembered. And thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Nachiket, many happy returns of the day from the whole department, from everybody, all of us. So have a very long life, remain safe, and just take care of yourself.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
We welcome once again, our special invitee, Dr. Sudhir Raval. As the department must be knowing him because he is quite a very renowned figure in our country and also abroad. He is the director in Rajiv Gandhi Cancer Hospital for robotic urology. He specializes in uro-oncology, and everybody knows who is doing uro-oncology. Dr. Sudhir Raval. So welcome, sir, to our session, and we will request our resident, Dr. Nirav and Dr. Gajendra are going to present seminar on localized advanced prostate cancer and metastatic prostate cancer. So who is going to present first?
I'm presenting first, sir. Good morning.
Gajendra. So Gajendra, you are welcome. Just share your screen and start.
Contemporary risk assessment. It has the ability to assess the pathological stage, better pre-treatment counseling of the patient, and more appropriate selection of the patient, selection of the therapy. On the basis of the clinical stage, serum PSA, and Gleason score, combination of all these three parameters increase the accuracy to predict the pathological stage and the prognosis than a single parameter alone. This is the risk stratification of according to the EA for the biochemical recurrence of the localized and the locally advanced CA prostate. Localized CA prostate is divided in the three category: low risk, intermediate, and the high risk on the basis of the PSA, Gleason score, and the clinical T stage. And if patient is having clinically T3 and T4 or lymph node positive disease with any PSA and any Gleason score, it is categorized in locally advanced disease. According to the NCCN, locally advanced CA prostate is divided into the two category. One is high risk and other is very high risk. High risk category include the T3A or Gleason score 8 to 10 or PSA more than 20 nanogram per ml. And the in very high risk category, it is T3B to T4 and primary Gleason's pattern 5 and more than 4 cohorts are present with Gleason's score 8 to 10. Second is the UCSF KPRA score. It is a straightforward score, 0 to 10 score. On the basis of the serum PSA, Gleason's score, and clinical TSS, percentage of the positive biopsy score at age at the diagnosis, KPRA is divided into the low, intermediate, and high risk group 0 to 1, 3 to 5, and 6 to 10. Second is the imaging principle in the locally advanced CA prostate. First is trust. It is the common imaging. It can detect the extracapsular extension and semi-vesical involvement. Disadvantage is it is the largely operator dependent and the cannot differentiate between the T2 and the T3 tumor. So it has limited ability in local staging, so not recommended routinely. MRI with the endorectal coil. MRI is best limited to the patient with the high risk features, abnormal finding on the DRE, PSA more than 10 and more than 3 core involved with the prostate cancer, and patient who is undergoing radical prostatectomy, specificity to MRI in predicting P3 disease is around 95%. And benefit of the this endorectal coil MRI is that there is a better visualization of the zonal anatomy of the prostate, and it better delineate the distinction between the T2 and T2 and T3 disease. Second is the multiparametric MRI. Accuracy of the multiparametric MRI for extracapsular extension is 76% and the seminal vesical involvement is 95%. It is based on the T2 image and the functional image, which is diffusion weighted imaging and the dynamic contrast enhancement. Nodal staging. Usually lymph node with the short axis more than 8 mm in the pelvis and more than 10 mm outside the pelvis are considered malignant. For this threshold, sensitivity to the CT and MRI is less than 40%. So because of the low sensitivity, CT or MRI should not be used for nodal staging in a low risk patient. Another is the choline PET CT. It also have low sensitivity, so it is not clinically acceptable for the diagnosis of the detection of the lymph node. Another is PSMA PET. It has an improved sensitivity and the specificity. PSMA targeting PET may have utility in identifying oligometastatic disease in the high risk patient by improving detection of the limited lymph node. According to the EUA guideline, PSMA PET is more accurate for staging the CT and bone scan, but to date, no outcome data exists. In any risk group, use of pre-biopsy MRI for local staging having weak strengthening according to the recent EUA guideline. In a low risk localized disease, don't use additional imaging for staging purpose, and recommendations is strong. In a intermediate risk group, the ISUP grade 3 or more than 3 include at least cross-sectional imaging, abdominal, pelvic, and the bone scan for the metastatic screen. It is a weak recommendation. And in a high risk and the localized and locally advanced disease, perform a metastatic screening, including at least cross-sectional abdominal pelvic imaging and the bone scan. For this category, recommendations are the strong. Now the management of the locally advanced CA prostate. Because locally advanced CA prostate is very aggressive disease, so management is having should have multimodal team approach. First is the deferred treatment, second radical prostatectomy, third is radiotherapy. Options other than the surgery are the HIFU cryotherapy and ADT monotherapy. Deferred treatment is used for the patient which is unwilling, unable to receive any form of the local treatment, asymptomatic, and the PSA doubling time more than 12 months, PSA less than 50 nanogram per ml, life expectancy less than 5 years, and non-poorly differentiated tumor. These are the recommendations for the patient for watchful waiting for the locally advanced CA prostate. Offer a deferred treatment policy using androgen deprivation therapy to the M0 asymptomatic patient with the PSA doubling time more than 12 months and a PSA less than 15 nanogram per ml, and the well differentiated tumor who are unwilling or unable to receive any form of the treatment. Recommendations the weak. Radical prostatectomy. Use of the radical prostatectomy has been decreased due to the prostate in a locally advanced CA prostate, because prostatectomy alone is often insufficient, and improved risk assessment has permitted better identification of these patients before treatment. Advances in the delivery of the radiotherapy, combined treatment modality, radiotherapy and the combined radiotherapy and the androgen deprivation therapy improve outcome compared with the monotherapy alone. And now increasing in trend of the prostatectomy for the more aggressive disease is due to the radical prostatectomy can cure some men with the high risk disease, and addition of the adjuvant and the combined therapy may further improve the outcome. This is the EAO 2021 recommendations for the radical prostatectomy offer radical prostatectomy to the high selected patient with only as a part of multimodal treatment. Radical prostatectomy for the PET3 disease. Extracapsular extension increase the rate of the clinical progression from 7 to 35%. Overall, the actual PSA-free survival after the radical prostatectomy is around 50% at 5 to 7 year post-op. Positive surgical margin has the highest relative risk for the progression. So all prostatic tissue must be undergoing during the prostatectomy. Treatment of the CN1M0 carcinoma prostate. 5 to 10% of the newly diagnosed CA prostate have synchronous pelvic lymph node metastasis, and for these patients, androgen deprivation therapy is the main treatment. But advantage in the both overall and the cancer specific survival has been seen after the local treatment and combined with the when it is combined with the ADT. Gleason score more than 8 and the greater number of the lymph node predict the poor outcome.
Yes, Gajendra.
Right, में थोड़ी दिक्कत आ रही है.
Okay. In the meantime, I would request others to please put off their video also and mute themselves. And as soon as the seminar is over, they can put their video on.
Unshare and then share again, probably. Then it will move.
Adjuvant treatment options after the radical prostatectomy. Aim is of the decreasing risk of the relapse. The risk of the cancer recurrence after the surgery depend on the pathological stage, cancer grade, and the surgical margin status. Adjuvant therapy after the radical prostatectomy are the radiation therapy, androgen deprivation therapy, and combined radiation and the androgen deprivation therapy. First is the radiation therapy. Use of the adjacent radiotherapy is associated with the biochemical free survival 50 to 80% at the 5-year compared with the radical prostatectomy alone. Both EORTC and the SWOG trials enrolls PET3 N0 and the positive surgical and with the positive surgical margins support immediate adjuvant RT versus the observation. Indication for the adjuvant radiotherapy are the PET3 disease, positive margin, and the seminal vesicle involvement. Type of the radiation therapy are the EBRT, brachytherapy, proton therapy. EBRT is the most common used therapy worldwide with IMRT with or without IGRT. Role of the hypofraction. The total dose of the radiation divided into the larger dose given over a shorter period of the time. Brachytherapy. In brachytherapy, transperineal radioactive seeds are implanted in the prostate under the USC guidance. Under the TRUST guidance, brachytherapy is only used traditionally for the low risk patient, and for high risk patient, EBRT is superior to the brachytherapy. Adjuvant androgen ablation therapy in a man with the clinic and N0 disease. Do not prescribe androgen deprivation therapy in a pathologically N0 patient. Adjuvant chemotherapy after the radiotherapy has no role. Adjuvant androgen ablation alone has a
Continue, Gajendra. Continue.
adjuvant androgen therapy in a patient with PN1 disease. Adjuvant androgen ablation in a patient with
Node positive.
Node combination of the radiotherapy, radical prostatectomy, and the early adjuvant hormone therapy in the node positive CA prostate saw a significant improved cancer specific survival and the overall survival in the prospective RTC. It is not used in the men with the less extensive disease.
Thank you. Dr. Nirav, you just come with your presentation.
Okay, sir. Gajendra, you will have to stop your sharing.
Rajendra, stop sharing.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay.
Shivam, can we discuss this now, or we'll discuss?
Should we? Can we can do it that way also?
Yeah.
So yes. So Dr. Nachiket. Nachiket. So if Dr. Nachiket, are you there?
Yes, I am there, sir. Yes.
Just start. So what we are trying to do is we will first discuss the locally advanced prostate cancer, and then we will do metastatic, right? So
Yes.
you can just moderate the session, and yes.
Thank you so much, sir. And if the residents have any question that they would like to ask sir about, locally advanced CA prostate, then it will be a golden opportunity for you, because you are definitely going to get a long case of CA prostate inside the exam. So if any of you have a question, so either you can put it inside the chat box, or you can unmute yourself and raise your hand and you can ask sir.
Meanwhile, can I make some comments?
Sir, please, sir, please.
Yeah, about
Please.
one thing is that Gajendra has rightly mentioned endorectal MRI, but it is not used practically, because I discussed in my institute also with the MRI specialist. He says that we give you information on 3 Tesla or 1.5 Tesla MRI with MP-MRI, almost same information you can. Anytime when we buy a new MRI, they don't ask for endorectal coil because of this. Second thing, Gajendra, you must know that DRE in these patients is must. You cannot get away without saying DRE, because digital rectal examination gives huge information about operability and the extracapsular extension and the other rectal mucosa status. So without DRE, you cannot offer radical prostatectomy or anything to these patients. Third is MRI finding for RRP. That's nicely mentioned. Only thing, the one practical thing which I would like to tell is that when MRI says T3A disease, 28 to 30% of these patients may be having only T2 disease when you operate them. These are data in the literature. The people who offer the surgery to these patients, they have seen this thing and it has been published. That is why role of radical prostatectomy picked up later on. Otherwise, according to Sears data, maybe in early 2000 or 90s, only 5% of locally advanced prostate cancer were getting surgery done. Otherwise, everybody was going for hormone therapy and radiotherapy. As later on, the the expertise of technique improved, people started offering radical prostatectomy. Now, almost in America, that the news which I have is 15 to 20% of locally advanced prostate cancer, they get radical prostatectomy as a part of multimodality treatment, as you mentioned. Another thing, that LAPC, locally advanced prostate cancer, is not the tip of iceberg. Many times you see the people say that if you have a minimal disease here, there is a whole disease in the body. It's not like this. In this case, even you can divide oligometastatic disease. So they are substaging coming in metastatic disease. Metastatic disease is next topic I know. So even in same way as oligometastatic disease is like LAPC is a subset of different type of patients who can be treated aggressively, and you can have better results in these patients. And then adjuvant RT and ADT, you rightly mentioned. Only thing which in practice we follow is if the patient has got node positive, and in one of your slides it was there also, that adjuvant ADT gives very good survival, because node positive is considered as systemic disease. But if you give radiotherapy, though there are many report in the literature from radiotherapy colleagues that if you add RT to these patients with the node positive, the survival increased. As on today, but there is no randomized control trial which actually favors RT and ATT both together in node positive patients, but I think trials are going on. Adjuvant RT versus early salvage RT is another field which has been explored, and there are 3 randomized control trial in the literature. And you can see them. Now the data suggests that early salvage RT is better, and you should add RT before patient's PSA is not more than 5. 0.5 was a older report. They say not more than 0.2. So you should add early salvage RT if you are practicing that. Otherwise, you can go for adjuvant RT. Only thing which I'll say that when these trials were done, in that almost 40 to 50% of the patients who have margin positive T3A disease, they did not require the radiotherapy because the PSA was controlled for a long time. So these are few comments, and you can ask me the question now if you have any, and we can add on this.
Sir, I have one query that I want to ask on behalf of the residents. Before planning a radical prostatectomy inside a locally advanced disease, presently, what is the recommendation about neoadjuvant hormonal, treatment for, shrinking the disease and making sure that the margins do come out to be negative? So, what is the present status of neoadjuvant hormone before radical prostatectomy?
Presently, it is still in a clinical trial setting. It has not come to the practice, and it is offered to the patients who are young and having locally advanced or even oligometastatic disease, where people have given NAHT, neoadjuvant hormone therapy, even added chemotherapy also. But in practice, there is no guideline for this. Nobody will offer, but in a clinical trial setting, yes. But if you see a young guy around 50, 51, and he is a locally advanced disease or maybe oligometastatic disease, these are the patients where you can offer NAHT in your practice, because at least you're not harming, and he's a young patient. But, disease different, so you have to use different approach. So in those cases you can use, but as on today, there is no guideline. This is being explored. And they have shown that there is a report from MSKCC also where they have used chemotherapy and hormone therapy and then operated, and they have shown the margin positivity rate is less, and there are some other parameters, but overall survival has not changed.
Okay. Sir, if you look into your chat box, then Rahul Gupta has joined us from Jammu, and we're very grateful. Rahul, welcome, good morning, and thank you for coming again, and it's a pleasure having you. So Rahul has a question that does giving neoadjuvant therapy make dissection difficult, or doesn't it make any difference? So your comments on that, sir?
Yeah, actually, that's a good question, and especially in the beginning of your surgical career, you will have problem when you get NAHT pre-operatively, because these patients, hormone therapy causes fibrosis. As you see, the chemotherapy causes fibrosis. NAHT does causes fibrosis. But if you are an experienced surgeon, you can very well do the good job without any side effects of this NAHT. But definitely you have to be prepared that it will not be a normal tissue as you see a patient who is coming without hormone therapy.
Sir, can I ask a question, Nachiket, sir?
Good morning, Neeraj. Thank you for, sir, we have Neeraj has joined us.
Yeah.
And Neeraj has a question. Thank you, Neeraj, for joining.
Good morning,
and please.
Rahul, sir. Good morning, sir.
Morning, Neeraj.
So just a small question regarding the comparison of radiotherapy versus radical prostatectomy in locally advanced prostate cancer. Have there been any head-to-head trials comparing the long-term outcomes of IMRT versus radical prostatectomy?
No,
because for routine surgeons who are not doing radical prostatectomy so often, we generally tend to, refer these patients to our RT colleagues for radiotherapy.
Yeah, Neeraj, there is no head-to-head trial. As I was telling that in 90s and early 2000, like 2004-5, radical prostatectomy was used in LAPC only in 5% of the cases, even according to the CS data in America. So now the use of radical prostatectomy has picked up in the patient in the center, which are high volume, and every young guys also doing radical prostatectomy. The people are becoming technically better. So till date, there is no data comparing radical prostatectomy with IMRT alone. Problem with the radical prostatectomy is that your patient will require adjuvant treatment sooner or later. And you, if you select your patient carefully, you can probably avoid adjuvant therapy also, but that subset is very small. So right now we cannot say. The problem of radiotherapy and hormone therapy alone is that if the patient fails locally, then you cannot offer him radical prostatectomy, because salvage radical prostatectomy is associated with the 100% incontinence most of the time. And the patient is not very highly motivated, one should not do that. But anecdotally, it is done. I have also done it in a selected group of patients. And if they'll end up with some surgical procedure like TURP or sometime stricture, they have miserable life. They can end up with even SPC lifelong. That's the problem with.
Sir, yes, sir. Shivam, sir.
First of all, I would just welcome Dr. S.S. Yadav also, if he has any comment. He was our head of the department just a few days ago only. So if you have any comments, please come in at any time. Sir, I have a query, and I would request the residents to please be ready with the queries. We would really welcome you all if you have questions, right? So in yesterday's presentation, one of our residents presented that in the European guidelines, they have said that the multiparametric MRI should be done in every case of even biopsy-naive patients. Like those who have not got any biopsy done, every patient should get a multiparametric MRI. And I just went through the studies that were done, and they said that the multiparametric MRI in every patient might help to improve the clinical detection of to a systematic biopsy plus a targeted biopsy. But again, in this presentation that the resident made, the AUA guideline says that it is a very weak recommendation, and multiparametric MRI should not be done in every case. So what is your take on this, please?
I think Nagar, I think, Jitin, what was his name? I forgot. Gajendra and Nitin talking about locally advanced prostate cancer.
Yeah.
In locally advanced prostate cancer, recommendation for multiparametric MRI is not much pre-biopsy. For staging, you can do definitely endorectal if you are doing, or you are doing MP-MRI or MRI per se. But I personally feel one must do DRE. Good DRE is very important for these patients. But if a locally advanced prostate cancer PSA is 20 high and DRE nodule is there, I don't think there is need of a multiparametric MRI.
Okay. Sir, we have two more. I'm going to just take two more questions because we have a 15-minute presentation, 20-minute presentation on metastatic CAP also.
Sure.
So Dr. Devendra Sharma, who is one of the senior urologists, Devendra has sent a question. What about the difficulty in post-TURP radical prostatectomy? And what is the incidence of incontinence in these cases? And there is another follow-up question from our associate, Dr. Govind Sharma. He's in our department. And he is asking what is the best form of neoadjuvant hormone therapy. I think that these are the last two questions that we'll take on this, because then we have to go forward. So these two questions, please.
That post-TURP radical prostatectomy, there are actually some technical difficulties, because you'll end up with a big bladder neck, one thing. And if the TURP has been done very meticulously, there will be inflammation on the posterior side towards the rectum. So when you dissect, you have to be very careful that the rectum does not get injured. You guys are not having robot. I'm sure that definitely Jaipur also will have robot, as the things are changing in robotic field. We have Indian robot also. But in open surgery also, one should be very careful at the apex, where the prostatic apex. That's the place where you injure the rectum. In robotic surgery, I generally don't use any, energy source for apex. I do sharp dissection, and then particularly any bleeder, you can buzz that rather than just using energy source. For incontinence, definitely these patients do have incontinence recovery, late continence recovery rather than immediate. So because the bladder neck is not there, you cannot Otherwise, if the bladder is there, which that also contributes some of the is part to return of continence. But that's the only thing. If the patient has had good TURP, he was not incontinent before your surgery, before the radical prostatectomy, the continence will return, but it will return late. You must tell patient that you have to do a lot of exercises, and it may take few months, maybe a year or so. The second question is best form of NAHT, that is neoadjuvant hormone therapy, is that this field is being explored now, and there are many things which have come. Previously, only you can give LHRH analog. Now you have antagonist also, but I don't see any difference between analog and antagonist. If you feel that you give a Degarelix for 1 month, 240 injection, and in 1 month prostate will shrink, it doesn't happen. Even after 3 months, I have not seen marked difference between the LHRH analog or antagonist. But the thing which has changed here is the use of abiraterone. There were trial from MSKCC also, they added abiraterone also in these patients who are locally advanced or who are having oligometastatic, and even the people have added the chemotherapy. So these three things are there which can be given to the patients before you offer the radical prostatectomy in the patients who are having locally advanced disease or oligometastatic disease. To my mind, even simple Zoladex or any LHRH analog is quite okay if you want to make surgery, reduce the positive surgical margin. That works. There is no evidence that adding hormone therapy or abiraterone works better. As on today, it's not there. It's being explored.
The European guidelines has said that it is not recommended to give neoadjuvant hormonal therapy before radical prostatectomy.
Yeah.
So does it make yeah?
This is only, in the clinical trials, or sometime you get patients who is very young and you want to do the best shot on him, then you can do. Otherwise, guideline don't support.
Thank you, sir. And now taking our class forward, I now request our resident, Dr. Nirav Mehta, and he'll be giving a small presentation, short presentation on metastatic CA prostate, and then we'll take questions for again 10 to 15 minutes. So Nirav, are you ready? Do you
Yes,
can you share your screen right now?
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Please.
Thank you, sir. Very good morning to all. Am I audible, sir?
Yes, you are. You are.
Okay, sir. Good morning to all. Going over to next presentation is management of metastatic CA prostate. Starting with the definition, it includes a non-regional lymph node, bone, and distal viscera. And it includes stage group 4 of the AJCC staging and M1 of the TNM staging. Talking about the incidence in Indian scenario, approximately 70 to 75% of the patient came with metastatic CA prostate, and almost 50% of the locally advanced patient may progress ultimately to metastatic CA prostate. About prognosis, median survival of the newly diagnosed metastatic CA prostate patient is 42 months when they take only ADT. Of course, several other factors do have their impaction on this, like the number and location of the mats, visceral mats, ISOP grade, or performance status. One important thing is volume of the disease. Volume is stratified into oligometastasis and extensive disease. Why do we need to stratify the patient? Because there is a separate set of treatment have been found now recently. So, and most of the researchers have stratified this patient on the basis of approximately cutoff value of 3 to 5 bone mets, non-visceral bone mets. So it is generally taken less than 3 to 5 bone mets is taken as oligometastatic disease. Talking about the manifestation, they have both constitutional and organ specific manifestation are there for metastatic CA prostate. Constitutional symptom are weight loss, anorexia, vomiting, nausea, all, and specific symptoms are bone pain or hematuria, lower urinary tract obstruction, upper tract changes due to obstruction, or etc. Talking about the treatment option, hormone therapy has been the mainstay of the treatment since many years, and whether it may be surgical or medical. Recently, combination of hormone therapy with the chemotherapy or abiraterone has been found to be effective. Radiotherapy for the oligometastatic disease and prostatectomy and metastatic directed therapy are still under trial. We will discuss everyone. So as we discussed hormone therapy, the core principle behind the hormone therapy is androgen suppression. Of course, it is palliative only. and all patients ultimately develop hormone refractory disease. The foundation for the hormone therapy was laid by Charles Huggins in 1941, who found the effectiveness of the orchidectomy in the CA prostate patient, and later on Dr. Skelly found LHRH analog with similar efficacy without any surgical intervention. And later on, subsequently, all the recent drugs have been came into the market. We will see in today's in next lecture all the drugs. In hormone therapy, various hormone therapy affect the various sites of the hypothalamus pituitary gonadal axis, and the goal of the therapy is to reach the castration level, and which is testosterone level is less than 50 nanogram per ml, and all patient will ultimately develop CRPC if they live long. Various mechanism of hormonal therapy, we start with the ablation of the source, which is orchidectomy. Orchidectomy is safe, effective, and irreversible procedure, but it is quite cost effective in Indian scenario. It is associated with lower side effect profile than hormonal therapy. Second one is anti-androgens. They are central or peripheral, or we can say steroidal or non-steroidal. In central and steroidal, there is a cyprotenone acetate, which is which directly inhibits the central receptor and decreases the testosterone production. But it is associated with severe side effects, so it is not more used. In non-steroidal agents, we have first and second generation. In first generation, we have flutamide, bialcoalimide, nilutamide. The main mechanism of action of these drugs are to allosteric and competitive inhibition of the receptor in the peripheral target on tissue. So it decrease the negative feedback mechanism and increase the testosterone level. And the second generation agents have different mechanisms that prevent the receptor migration, DNA ligand binding, and DNA translocation. So they are more potent than the first generation. And one another difference is intrinsic partial agonistic activity of the first generation agent. This is the basis for the anti-androgen withdrawal phenomena which we see when we combine these agents with the LHRH agonist. Over the period, the androgen receptor undergo mutation and become hypersensitive to the androgen partial agonistic activity. So this leads to rise in PSA, and when we withdraw this drug, it leads to decrease in PSA, which is called anti-androgen withdrawal phenomena, which is seen with the first generation drugs, but not with the second generation drug. This is the mechanism. Cyproton acetate acts on the central mechanism, hypothalamus, and the rest non-steroidal agent acts on the peripheral organ target tissue. Various agents are there. Flutamide is short half-life, so it is given in frequent doses. The rest all can be given OD doses. A specific side effect we talk about. Bicalutamide has prominent gynecomastia. Nilutamide has pulmonary fibrosis and delayed dark adaptation. And darolutamide has not been approved still by FDA. This is the anti-androgen withdrawal phenomena which we have talked about, and the PSA decline which occurs after the withdrawal of the drug, it is occur between 4 to 6 weeks after withdrawing the drug with different agents, and almost it persists for 3 to 5 months after that. This also we have seen second generation drugs have less anti-androgen withdrawal phenomena than first generation drugs. Second mechanism is inhibition of LHRH through LHRH analogs. Normally, the hypothalamus stimulates the pituitary with the pulsatile stimulation of the LHRH. With the LHRH analog, we continue stimulate the pituitary, and this leads to desensitization of the receptor. But during and this leads to decrease in LH and ultimately testosterone. This is the principle behind the LHRH analog. But during this initial stimulation period, it leads to increase in LH and ultimately leads to flare-up phenomena. And to combat this phenomena, we have to cover this period with the anti-androgen anti-androgen drugs. This is given 1 week before and continue up to 21 days after the starting of the LHRH analog. Various drugs are available like leuprolide, histoline, goserelin, triptorelin. They are present in market with various preparation 1 month, 3 month to 1 yearly depot preparation. Second is LHRH antagonist. These drugs directly inhibit the central receptor, LHRH receptor. So there is no flare-up phenomena, and there is no need to cover up with the anti-androgen drugs. And they decrease 86% of the LH within 24 hours, and it suppress both LHS and FSH. Initial agents like Abarelix and Centrolix had some issues with histamine-like allergic reaction, but the Degarelix is safe, and it is given in 240 mg straight dose. Later on, 80 mg monthly dose is given. Another phenomena is inhibition of androgen synthesis. As we know, the androgens are derived from the cholesterol with multi-step enzymatic pathway. The different drugs act on the different step and inhibit the synthesis of the androgens. Starting with the ketoconazole, ketoconazole acts on the more proximal step of the pathway, it inhibits the lenosterol to cholesterol inhibition transformation. So it in that way we can see that proximally that it also inhibits aldosterone cortisol production. So we need to combine this and supplement this with this drug. And but this step is also the ketoconazole is effect is reversible. So over the period, if we given for long time, testosterone again level to start to rise. So it is not given. It cannot be given for long term. And currently, it is only used as second line treatment. Another one drug is aminoglutamide. It also inhibits the proximal step from cholesterol to pregnenolone, and it also inhibits both cholesterol and cortisol, aldosterone and cortisol production. So it is also combined with both aldosterone and cortisol. It is given 100 mg per day dose. It is also used as second line in the CRPC patients. Next is abiraterone acetate. It is potent, selective, and irreversible inhibitor of the CYP17 alpha hydroxylase and CYP1720 lyase enzyme. And as we can see, it inhibits the middle step. It is distal to the aldosterone production and proximal to the cortisol production. So it decreases the cortisol production and increase aldosterone production. The side effect profile of the abiraterone we can see are due to Cohen syndrome or hyperaldosteronism, like fluid overload, hypertension, hypokalemia. So prednisolone is supplemented with abiraterone, and dose is given 1 gram empty stomach. It is approved for both metastatic or as well as CRPC. Talking about the response of the androgen, there are certain markers developed to assess the response of the hormonal therapy. PSA at the 7 month is has been set as a benchmark to assess the further response of the hormonal therapy. The lower the PSA at the 7 month, the more the survival we can expect. Several trials have also showed the lower the level of PSA, there is more the median survival to CRPC, and also overall and progression-free survival are more. The lower the level of testosterone we get at the 1 year or 7 months of it after the ADT. Another one important thing is one meta-analysis showed there is no superiority between surgical and medical castration. Both have similar efficacy, and yes, certain there are small trials show definite benefit of orchidectomy over the hormonal therapy, but meta-analysis and large trial have failed to show any superiority of one over the other. Another index is a bone scan index. It tells about the percentage of skeleton involved with the metastatic disease, and it gives idea about the time from hormone sensitive to CRPC progression of the patient. A bone scan index of greater than 1% is considered to be a poor prognostic indicator. Another one is the enzyme. One of the enzyme of the pathway of the cholesterol to androgen pathway. It is a 3-beta hydroxysteroid dehydrogenase, and the mutation of this enzyme leads to resistance to degradation, and this leads to continuous production of the androgen, and it's a poor prognostic factor. Talking about the complication of the hormonal therapy, there are various complications like anemia, hot flush, osteoporosis, gynecomastia, erectile dysfunction. Talking about the few of them, osteoporosis usually develop 4 years after the ADT, and we can go for Dexascan pre-therapy. This can tell about the weakness of the bone. We can supplement with vitamin D or calcium, or we can give donizumab, zoledronic empirically pre-therapy or between the therapy. Second is hot flush. It is warm feeling in upper torso and head. It occurs in 50 to 80% of the patient, and both spontaneously and precipitated, and it improves over the time. In acute situation, we can give drugs like cyproton acetate, venlafaxine, gabapentin, and megastol acetate. Another one is gynecomastia. It is most prominent with the bicalutamide, and prophylactic radiation Tangara to the bilateral breast can prevent this. In case of mastodynia, tamoxifen is the treatment of it. Due to this much of side effect, there was attempt was done to reduce the period of the androgen therapy by discontinuing between period to the androgen therapy. So intermittent androgen therapy was came into the act, and it was tried, in which the patient was given the hormonal therapy for 5 to 6 months, and once it reaches PSA level, reaches the NADI level, it is stopped, and wait up to the trigger level is reached, and again the androgen therapy was started. But the trials have failed to show superiority of the intermittent androgen therapy, and currently standard of care is still continuous androgen therapy due to better median survival and overall survival rate of the continuous androgen therapies. Another thing is combination of the therapy, like upfront chemotherapy and abiraterone with the androgen deprivation therapy. Two large randomized trials charted and stamped MCA showed superiority of the combination of androgen deprivation with docetaxel, and they show clinically significant overall survival in both these study. This is the charted study showed superiority of ADT plus docetaxel over the ADT alone. And this is TEMPED. This also showed the superiority of docetaxel combination with the standard of care like ADT. Another is combination of abiraterone with ADT. Latitude and STEMPED arm G showed superiority of overall survival. This also showed the superiority. So both docetaxel and abiraterone is approved by FDA, and they're in the EU guideline for the upfront treatment in patient with metastatic CA prostate. Another true androgen receptor pathway inhibitor like apalutamide and enzalutamide have been studied in ENZAMET and TITAN studies, and they have showed overall better survival. This enzalutamide and enzalutamide, and this is apalutamide. Both have showed improved overall survival in the comparison with the ADT alone. So they are also there FDA approved, and they are also there in the EU guideline for the treatment. Talking about the radiotherapy for oligometastatic. This is where the different set of treatment is present for oligometastatic disease. For oligometastatic disease, both NCCN and EU guidelines suggest that radiotherapy is there and is the treatment of choice, and it can be given, is their option. Based upon the small HORAD trial and large stopgap trial, this is the retrospective meta-analysis, and both have showed improved survival with radiotherapy in oligometastatic disease. So it is given only in oligometastatic disease, not the extensive metastatic disease. STEMPED one subclass of the patient were also compared for the radiation therapy, and it also showed the clinical significant benefit of the radiation therapy combination with hormonal therapy. About prostatectomy, we have not much data. One large retrospective data is there suggesting the clinical significant benefit of prostatectomy in metastatic CA prostate. Based upon this, several prospective trials are going on. One large trombone trial is going on. It is going to soon be present. We don't have much data about that, but still now prostatectomy is under trial and is not that so much widely used for metastatic CA prostate. Talking about metastatic directed therapy, the main rationale behind this is that for we are talking for oligometastatic disease. The eradication of oligometastatic sites will hamper the further spread of the disease. And the options we have metastatectomy or RT or SBRT, stereotactic body radiotherapy. Several trials like SABER-COMET showed 25% improved overall survival with this stereotactic body radiotherapy. Also, there is ORIOL trial in phase 2 randomized trial. Both have showed improved survival with the metastatic directed therapy in oligometastatic disease. Based upon this, there is a chance that future oligometastatic disease may have metastatic directed therapy plus this systemic therapy. EU guidelines have both upfront chemotherapy as well as abiraterone and apalutamide and enzalutamide as strong recommendation for the treatment in metastatic metastatic CA prostate, and radiotherapy for low volume disease, not for the high volume disease. And the prostatectomy and metastatic directed therapy are in clinical trial, not therefore treatment in EU guidelines. So at the final, we have the options for metastatic hormone responsive prostate cancer. ADT plus ADT is their mainstay, and for low volume disease, we have all the upfront chemo, abiraterone, apalutamide, enzalutamide, plus radiotherapy, and for high volume disease, we have all these upfront therapies. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Nirav. And every time we have a discussion on metastatic CA prostate, things just, get more complicated, and more complicated. Sir, your comments, sir, we'd be grateful if we have a few expert comments, and then we can take a few questions, sir.
Yeah, sure. That's nicely presented, especially the last slide actually summarizes everything in HSPC, which is another subset of patient, another field of treatment has evolved with the time. In past, we used to give only androgen, used to talk about complete androgen blockade and all, but HSPC and CRPC are, then CRPC M0 also is a subset of patient which are treated differently. The thing which is going on in this field is like lung cancer. If you know, the lung cancer has gone on molecular classification. And I know I really was surprised because CA lung, we had our colleague in 2000 who had brain mets. Most of the time, CA lung presents with the brain mets. He had a small primary and brain metastasis, and he was anesthetist and he did not survive for 9 months. And recently, one of my batchmate who had again brain mets from CA lung, and we actually treated him here. We did EBUS and all, and then the ALK positive, this mutation was found, and he is on a erdafitinib tablet, probably, if I am right. And the data are that he will survive for 10 years. In prostate, it is going slowly, but the subset which is molecularly developing is probably one is coming P10 loss. If your trial is doing Rajiv Gandhi, it is in HSPC setting only. And here they say the loss of gene of P10 in HSPC patients, which is less than 15%. I have enrolled, I have actually screened around 20 patients, only 2 patients we could get in the country, or probably 3 patients the country could give. Just to talk about in HSPC, darolutamide is not FDA approved, but the advantage of darolutamide is that it does not go to CNS as the enzalutamide goes. There is a question in chat box also about when can we start primarily enzalutamide. With ADT, yes, you can, especially if the patient is highly diabetic, where you don't want to give steroid, as abiraterone is always given with the steroid. The only thing is that there are data to suggest that enzalutamide given after abiraterone does have better effect on the survival rather than abiraterone given after enzalutamide. Otherwise, if it is mandatory and if you have any particular situation, you definitely can go for enzalutamide right from the beginning. The thing which, one thing which you nicely mentioned about ketoconazole, and there is another few agents were there in past which we are not using, like Honven and estramastine sulfate. Honven I still use, but not much. Estramastine sulfate is already gone. Ketoconazole is also not very popular nowadays because of effects, and we have other drugs also. There are few things which are quite effective in metastatic setting, especially in CRPC. But probably topic was only HSPC, if I'm right. I'm right, Nachiket, is HSPC we are talking? We are.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
CRPC is different, yeah. So that's fine. Otherwise, PSMA, lutetium, actinium were there. The thing which oligometastatic disease, yes, trials are going on, but CS data you have shown. There is a Munich registry data also, where they retrospectively found that there were advantage of radical prostatectomy in subgroup of the patient who have minimal metastasis, and then they were followed up. The trial which is going on, and one more trial which is going on, is MD Anderson Cancer Center. Because I have friend there who is doing this. So we keep on talking, and he says that probably the overall survival are better if you offer radical prostatectomy in patients with oligometastatic disease, and only in selective group, not all the group. So these are my comment. I'm happy to take any question. The chat box there.
If the residents can just be ready with the questions. I would just ask 1 or 2 questions. One is, sir, the first slide said that in Indian scenario, the incidence of metastatic prostate cancer is, I think, 50 to 75% what is said. So do you think in our continent it is so high? The presentation is of metastatic.
Yeah, I think they're right. Almost 70% is still the patients who are coming with metastasis, even in Rajiv Gandhi, though I get a lot of referred localized disease or locally advanced. Even then, around that figure, I'll agree, because 70% of the patients still are having metastatic disease.
Okay. About the castrate level, he said about 50 nanogram. There are studies which show that if it is less than 20 nanogram per ml, then probably it is much better. So what is your take?
No, I agree with you. Lesser the testosterone, better the effect for a patient who is on metastatic disease. They actually 50 nanogram came from the trials actually when they tried, LHRH analog. LHRH analog may not give as low as testosterone as the orchiectomy gave, or even the antagonist gave. But in the beginning of 2000 or so, there were a lot of trial came from companies, and they made the cutoff value of 50 nanogram as castrate level, because most of these patients were on LHRH analog. So, but I agree with you that if the testosterone as much as is lower possible, that's helpful for the patient.
About the LHRH antagonist, you said is almost the same as probably agonist, but is there any indication when you feel that there's bone metastasis with impending spinal cord compression, where we want a result very early, then we need to give antagonist rather than agonist?
No, I said in the LAPC setting, reducing the prostate size and other thing, but LHRH antagonist does have a special role in treatment of the patients. Though their cardiac data are not very convincing, but they push that like anything because probably they want to capture the market. But definitely if the patient has got impending fracture, if he's got a very bad disease, you know, patient is moribund, you don't want to give them agonist or you don't want to do the orchiectomy. LHRH antagonists have a great role. And sometimes, you know, if the patient is having lower urinary tract symptom, which are very bad and you want early relief, then also LHRH antagonist does have a role in these patients.
I think one thing that probably he missed is about the role of chemotherapy in neuroendocrine tumors and other tumors rather than adenocarcinoma of prostate. Like, because there probably the role of chemotherapy in the form of gemcitabine or cisplatin would be useful. So what is your take on this? How many patients you find with neuroendocrine or small cell tumors in CA prostate?
Now the things are changing. Probably our pathologists are also becoming wiser. They are giving a lot of reports with them who have high-grade tumor. There is element of neuroendocrine tumor also. And in these patients, rather than adding Taxotere, we use etoposide and cisplatinum as an adjuvant treatment with ADT. So this thing is evolving now, and we see many patients who are high-grade tumor and they have neuroendocrine differentiation. The choice of chemotherapy is etoposide and cisplatinum rather than Taxotere with ADT.
So we're getting a few questions from the residents, and in a nutshell, if they are presenting a case of metastatic CA prostate, many times they ask us also that when will you actually start directly abiraterone? When will you start enzalutamide? When will you consider chemotherapy? And when would you like to grade or use a staircase mechanism in which, okay, your abiraterone is not working, then enzalutamide is not working, chemotherapy. So I mean, how do you decide per se if a patient comes to you? Just very briefly from the examination perspective, what the boys have to say inside the exam. Just a few questions there.
Yeah, actually, that's if you ask me, a lot of things depends on the examiner. What is he using? But there are some set thing which can be said. Many times examiner would like the student to say this thing. So I suggest you agree with the examiner. Don't disagree with the examiner. Never ever argue with your examiner, because then he cannot tolerate this. And but then according to the literature, you can tell them that, sir, these are the guidelines, but you are right. Whatever you are using, I agree with you. So the guidelines, abiraterone, enzalutamide, apalutamide. Apalutamide is not there in India. Darolutamide will come. They're doing trial in our hospital also. So we have enzalutamide and abiraterone and chemotherapy. There are three. If you go the hardcore literature data, all three are effective. Their effects are same. Now, how to choose in a patient? If the patient has got, in my practice, like if the patient has got high burden disease and he has got high Gleason's score, you have in last slide, actually, this was nicely showed also. I'll prefer chemotherapy, high PSA, burden of disease is high PSA and high Gleason's, I'll prefer chemotherapy. Otherwise, a patient can go on abiraterone first, and after that enzalutamide, as the data suggests that enzalutamide after abiraterone is still effective. But if he has got bad, heart and he's not fit for abiraterone, diabetes is uncontrolled, then you can definitely go to enzalutamide also. Make sure there is no history of convulsion and all that. Rarely it can have patient. Enzalutamide does not have any side effects. That's the advantage of this thing. So this is how you can go. But you must not offend your examiner.
Yes. Sir, Rahul. Sorry, sir. Yes, please. Sir.
Just about that enzalutamide, as he said, what I have read is if you have visceral metastasis, then you can choose enzalutamide as your first line. Rather.
I forgot to tell about visceral metastasis. Actually, visceral metastasis at one point of time was indication for chemotherapy. But the new data which has come from Stampede trial, enzalutamide, abiraterone, and chemotherapy. All three works in visceral metastasis also. But preferred treatment is definitely chemotherapy. If not, enzalutamide is probably another option. But if some students say that abiraterone I'll use, he's not wrong.
So there is a question from Rahul. Rahul, are you there? So Rahul is asking, what is the role of oral biphosphonates? And I think vis-a-vis compared to IV biphosphonates, Rahul. And
Because a lot of patients are now asking for if there is any oral drug, because we live in a place which is quite hilly area, you know. So the patients have to come specially every 3 weeks to get one done. So there are one or two drugs available. I just wanted to know what is the experience and is somebody using it and with what efficacy?
See, Rahul, oral bisphosphonates mainly are used for osteoporosis, especially elderly people, even without metastasis or any other disease. Per se, for CA prostate, guidelines are you can do BMD, bone marrow index, BMI, and decide if there's got osteoporosis, then you can give one injection of bisphosphonate, injectable, and calcium, and repeat after 6 months. Oral bisphosphonates, if you add, I don't think it's a wrong thing. Definitely it's convenient for the patient and he can continue, but not many people are practicing this thing. But if somebody is giving, I'm not against it. But generally in metastatic setting with a BMI, bone marrow index, and all findings are bad, then only you can add bisphosphonates. Otherwise, if the patient is not having pain, I don't think you should use any type of bisphosphonate, because you have to keep these medicines for later on when the patient becomes symptomatic, because symptoms are must. Otherwise, unnecessary treating does not, reduce any, give any overall survival. But definitely, if you have any impending fracture, then because SRE, any skeletal related event, if you can avoid, that will be the best for increasing the survival. Because these patients, if any single SRE occurs, their survival comes down. So these are the situation which you have to keep in mind, and then you can.
So to concise, sir, only symptomatic, metastatic, showing osteoporosis and BMI, the bone marrow index on the lower side are the patients who have to be started on biphosphonates.
Yes.
That is fine. But my question was, are we using, any one of us is using oral formulations?
I'm not using. If
I'm not
Shivam or Nachiket are using, I have no idea. But Shivam, you are mute. Unmute yourself. Shivam, you are muted.
Shivam sir, please unmute yourself.
Okay, sorry. So we are using biphosphonate. Many of patients we find, because in our Indian context, this zoledronic acid contraindicated who have a poor oral hygiene. So definitely we need to see the oral hygiene first before giving zoledronic acid. So many of these patients I would put on oral biphosphonates, alendronate and all that.
How are the effects now, Shivam? How are you seeing patients?
Actually, we haven't done a study, but what I have seen from the literature also, that even you can give oral biphosphonates in such patients if you're not able to give zoledronic, or if the patient is not taking zoledronic then.
Yeah, this I think is not a bad practice. I'll agree with this.
Yeah. And one more thing, in one of the conferences I heard that in metastatic prostate cancer, what is the role of statins and metformin? Many of the consultants would give metformin and statins, which actually help in overall improvement of the patient. What is your take on?
Yeah, actually exercise, calcium, statin, metformin. Metformin, so people say that it is anti-aging and it affects everything. People have suggested, and if you go for any, supportive treatment, these are the agents that should be used. Practically, I have not used except the calcium, and I don't use a statin. A statin itself, I have not taken, but my cardiologist says that it does have some gastric side effects or something. Metformin is a good drug, definitely, but it can cause diarrhea. So, and diarrhea is really bad. Chirag, please mute yourself. So metformin is a good drug. Only one has to see that patient does not deteriorate, his quality of life does not deteriorate, because there is no hardcore data to support that they will increase the survival in many, many years. Ultimately, is the biological behavior of the cancer. We know that how the patients are going to behave in future. We have seen patients who just have a head orchiectomy and they live for 10 to 15 years. So that subset of the patient is still there. But adding anything, if the patient is like, if he's diabetic and he's on metformin, that's a great thing. Otherwise, I have not used it, but people have suggested and people are using in their practice these agents.
Thank you, sir.
See, Nachiket, any question from in the chat box? Any question from the residents, please?
I think that we've completed all the questions that had come inside the chat
Right.
box.
Yeah.
If the residents have one or two questions that they can ask us, then they can ask, sir. This is because then we are going to wind up the session now. We've gone beyond our time. So is there any question from the residents?
So if not, I'll just say that it was really great to interact with you guys, especially I love teaching. When I go to KGMC, I always take some classes and all. It's my parent institute, and it was same here, which I young crowd asking the question, if I have any chance to go and operate in your center when the robot comes, or even in the open surgery, I will love to do that and try. You guys are most welcome to Rajiv Gandhi anytime to just see the uro-oncology, learn the uro-oncology. I do uro-oncology only. I don't have stone patients. Actually, I wanted to get selected in Jaipur once upon a time because my sister is in Jaipur, but I got in Vellore and somehow, but Jaipur had been a special place for me always. Thanks a lot, you guys. Great to see you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for coming. And we hope that as the COVID becomes much less and disappears, then definitely we would like to invite you to our center. And let's see, the robot, if it comes in our center, definitely it would be a great idea to have you do surgery, robotic surgery in our center. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Once again for coming and enlightening us. Thank you very much.
Good day, everyone.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Good day, everybody. Good.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone.